Assalamualaikum. I'm Nur Farah binti Abdul Hadi and welcome to my discourse seminar presentation. So, the journal article that I picked for this particular seminar is titled How Islam Portrayed in Western Media, a Critical Discourse Analysis Perspective. The authors are Fatima Por Ibrahim and Gholam Reza Zare, and it is published on June 2013 by the Islamic Azhar University of Najafabad for the journal International Journal of Foreign Language Teaching and Research in the page 57 to 75 with this particular number of ISSN. So, first of all, the journal introduces us to a problem, which is linguistic stereotyping in media representation. The study notices a recurring trend of linguistic choices in Western media headlines that actually contribute to the stereotyping of Islam and the negative representation of Muslims. Of course, the implications of such linguistic strategies need to be critically examined in order to understand their potential impact on public perceptions. So the notions that were used in this paper is called Orientalism by Edward Said. This is coined to describe the Western tradition of portraying the East, particularly the Middle East and Asia, in a very stereotypical and exoticized ways. Apart from that, the framework ideological square introduced by Vandish is also used in critical discourse analysis to examine how language is employed in order to construct social meaning and power relations. So the research objectives of this paper includes to investigate the function of language as a social practice in itself and as constituting other social practices such as media discourse. Apart from that, it is to make the opaque ideologies and worldviews transparent by employing a theoretical framework and a practical analysis of language. Lastly, it is to examine the significant impact of the headline content on shaping the overall impression of Islam and Muslims in media coverage. So, the literature review centers around the Orientalism critique by Edward Said, who argues that Orientalism as a style of thought perpetuates stereotypes about the East, reinforcing Western dominance and justifying imperialistic actions. Said highlights a dichotomous worldview between the West and the Orient, leading to fixed perceptions and representations. Apart from that, Orientalism relies on binary language, which means dividing things into two opposing categories. For example, the East might be portrayed as exotic, mysterious, traditional, and backwards, while the West is depicted as rational, modern, advanced, and civilized. This binary language simplifies and essentializes complex cultures and societies, reducing them to a set of fixed and often exaggerated characteristics. Lastly, the literature review touches on critical discourse analysis, or also known as CDA, which is a field concerned with analyzing written and spoken text to reveal power dynamics, dominance, inequality, and bias within social, political, and historical contexts. This relates to the Vandish approach, which incorporates social analysis, cognitive analysis, and discourse analysis, emphasizing the socio-cognitive aspects of the language. Next up is methodology. So the data for this paper is comprised of news stories from four newspapers, which is the Independent, the New York Times, the Herald Tribune, and the Times newspapers from January 1st, 2008 to December 30, 2012. The reasons for this selection criteria is because these are the elite newspapers from the US and Britain as their prominence and large leadership is recognized. Apart from that, all selected newspapers were also ranked among the top 10 in circulation in their respective countries. The newspapers are also leaders in covering for international news, attracting the readers globally. One of the article selection criteria for the headline analysis is only articles containing the terms Islam or Muslims in the headlines were selected for the headline analysis. Last but not least, the paper also exclude the editorials and opinions of the publishers to focus more on the headlines and content of the newspapers. Moving on to findings and discussion, the total newspapers that were selected is 16 out of 46. The findings and discussion summarizes the representation of Islam and Muslims in headlines. Since the analysis focused on lexical choices, presupposition, collocations, and Orientalist themes in headlines, the 16 selected headlines were discussed to identify the dichotomous characterization as versus them and negative social values placed on Islam and Muslims. Moving on to the themes and frequency. So the Orientalist themes were found, which is the themes of Islam as a threat and irrationality were most prevalent. Other repeated themes included backwardness and a dichotomy between Christians versus Muslims. Next is the word's frequency. The negative words collocating with Islam and Muslims include radical, fundamentalist, terrorist, violent, extremist, kill, war, threat, fear, corruption, and barbarity were also found. Hence, in overall, the findings reveal a consistent negative portrayal of Islam and Muslims in the selected headlines. The themes and linguistic choices contribute to reinforcing an Orientalist perspective, potentially hindering positive developments in understanding Islam. Negative representations also perpetuate stereotypes and may shape public perception in an unfavorable manner. In conclusion, the critical discourse analysis within this paper did touch on the concept of identity and Islam. This is because Islam is characterized limitlessly through repeated cliches by the Western media. Apart from that, the Western broadsheets also utilize a three-part process involving the identification, separation, and negativization of a Muslim space, reframing cultural differences as deviance and threat. Lastly, the research contributes to raising awareness, serving as a tool for critical thinking, and having implications for education across disciplines. That is all for my presentation. Thank you so much.